Astriferous is a death metal band from San Jose, Costa Rica, and Pulsations from the Black Orb is their debut full length. It's not that long coming. I think they formed somewhere before 2018. They put out their first demo tape, and it kind of took off from there pretty quickly. You could tell that they were very focused on old school death metal, and good old school death metal with a lot of riffs, a lot of violent feeling to it, and strong, aggressive performances. So that was a more primitive style that they were performing on that demo, and they quickly moved on to a sort of Finnish death metal influence dynamic, which worked with atmosphere and aggression in a strong way, and again focused on guitar riffs. It wasn't packed to the gills with every bit of riff, but these are guys from bands who I like quite a bit. I think Bloodstock Necrovoid is one of my favorite bands of the last 10 years in terms of death doom. I think it's just a fantastic band, and I can't wait to see what they do next. And I think this band has quickly been on par or even excelled that style. Well, the quality of what they're doing and the amount of riffs they put into it. This album is a little bit more, they're capitalizing on their demigod-esque dynamic with a little bit more doom here and there, a lot more riffs everywhere, and an aggressive sort of finish meets North, like Florida meets a lot of things feeling, which incorporates groove here, death doom here, death thrash metal here. It becomes a very technical and aggressive record that still knows how to move, knows how to listen to what works in a song and what doesn't, and then pack all the good ideas around those open spaces. So before I get carried away and stumble over what I'm saying, we'll jump into a song and refocus. So you can tell when a rhythm guitarist both appreciates the atmospheric qualities that were introduced by bands like Incantation in the early 90s, as well as the weird sort of out there exaggerations of groove that a band like Crematory might have added to the kind of riff obsessed side of death metal in the late 80s and early 90s. And these guys just happen to be very good at pairing those two things into a sound that now really emphasizes a strong bass guitar uh, tone and personality within the rhythms. The drummer is fantastic. The vocalist is imposing. It creates this atmosphere of very aggressive, um, beastly death metal that also has a lot of tact to what it's doing. They're not just salading out riffs from a shooter; they're actually making sense in movement. So, yes, this is an album that is just all about the riffs a lot of the time, but there is atmosphere, there is purpose to the movements, and there's more than just references to other bands and other riffs in this album. It's the kind of album where you rarely find such a rhythm guitarist setup where you can't necessarily pick out exactly where the bass line was. Maybe there's a bit of like Legion era deicide in some of the stomping about, but that's just one piece of 100 that doesn't necessarily lead you back to an obvious point of reference. Now, it was Finnish death metal before, but now this is their own, kind of becoming their own thing very quickly. It almost feels like this is either a very quick leap or just a very quick realization of what's the ideal classic death metal album and how can we just make a great one right off the bat. Well, this is a great one right off the bat. Uh, I've been completely obsessed with it personally. Old school death metal, the classic late 80s through mid 90s stuff is really my thing. It is what I like the most of the time in extreme metal. So this is really what I was looking for this month, this year, and the last 20 years. So that goes into my bias and the recommendation here. But I do think this is a particularly uh, excellent record. I was kind of iffy on the album art at first, but I think it's very distinctive, and yeah, I kind of think that it works for how this record presents itself, and overall, I think it's a very easy thing to recommend to the classic death metal fan, or, if you listen to a lot of boring mid-paced death metal, this is an excellent alternative to with a lot of brutality, speed, and atmosphere, and death doom, and thrash riffs even here and there. So a superior product in most every way, from my point of view, and a very high recommendation. There's a lot more detail and spurging in the review, so check that out and go for it. Yeah.